Welcome to this explainer. It reads exactly like a high-tension thriller. Unprecedented hype, blinding spotlights, and eventually, a devastating crash. We're looking at the story of Freddy Yadu today. Once literally the most sought-after young athlete on the planet, his story isn't just about sport, right? It's a deep dive into the machinery of fame, expectations, and what actually happens when the world demands absolute perfection from someone who's, well, still just figuring out who they are.
Now, I want you to imagine, just for a second, being exactly this age, 14. At an age when most of us are just starting high school, stressing over math homework, and trying to fit in, Freddy Adu became the youngest American ever to sign a Major League professional contract. Drafted first overall in Major League Soccer, he was carrying the crushing expectations of the entire global football world right on his shoulders. 14. It's a number that completely reframes everything we're going to talk about today.
Okay, let's dive into this because this wasn't just a casual compliment. It is arguably the heaviest crown in all of sports, the next Pelé. Seriously, just think about the sheer, impossible magnitude of that specific comparison. We aren't just talking about being called a great player or a future star. The media, the fans, even established legends of the game were throwing this label around. They literally compared a teenager to arguably the greatest, most legendary figure in the history of the beautiful game. They set an impossible benchmark from day one. Which brings us to Section 1, the next Pelé, and a childhood in the spotlight. So it all started with something incredibly pure, extraordinary early talent. In these childhood years, there was this undeniable raw skill. Youth scouts who watched him dominating tournaments in Maryland, against kids years older than him, mind you, were completely mesmerized. They noted his raw physical superiority and a technical brilliance that literally made seasoned evaluators stop dead in their tracks. It was the joy of the game in its truest form. But looking back, that pure joy creates such a heartbreaking contrast to the immense pressure that would so quickly follow. Moving into Section 2, building the hype machine as the frenzy begins. Because let's face it, pure talent in modern football rarely stays a local secret for long. It became a massive, multi-front onslaught. Major brands didn't just want him, they felt they needed him to be the face of American soccer. Fans absolutely loved him, projecting all their hopes for the future of the sport right onto this one kid. And the media? Well, they simply couldn't stop talking about him. Every pass, every goal, every smile was broadcast and hyper-analyzed. It was a complete saturation of attention that violently accelerated his life. And this wasn't just sports news anymore. It was full-on cultural news. This rush of national attention brought an influx of massive, unprecedented sponsorships. Before he even turned 14, Freddy signed a $1 million contract with Nike. $1 million. He even filmed this huge Sierra Mist commercial standing side by side with Pelé himself. These details cemented his status as a full-blown national phenomenon practically overnight. The game was no longer just being played on the grass, It was being played in boardrooms, on giant billboards, and on TV screens around the whole world. Section 3, the weights of expectations, and the ultimate turning point. See, when you're built up that high, the air gets very, very thin. On one side, you've got these massive public expectations, be the next global icon, carry an entire franchise, basically revolutionize American soccer. But on the flip side, you have a teenager's reality. Imagine a 14-year-old trying to navigate the adult locker room at DC United. He was just a kid, vulnerable, still developing emotionally, and suddenly facing resentment from grown men whose salaries were a fraction of his massive endorsements. What the world demanded was fundamentally incompatible with the reality of simply being a kid. So the crucial point is that this fame directly translated into overwhelming, suffocating pressure. Former coaches later pointed out the impossible physical mismatch of his situation. While Freddy was technically gifted, absolutely, biologically, he was still a child. And he was getting battered week in and week out by seasoned professional defenders. The dream mutated into an inescapable, crushing burden. When every single physical mistake is magnified by millions, and you're literally taking hits from men twice your size, the joy of the game just evaporates. And that leads us to Section 4, the inevitable fall, and his career struggles. You can only carry the weight of the world for so long before your legs give out, right? We can see how this chaotic sequence of events started with a frantic search for the right fit. There was the initial trade away from DC United, followed by a massive leap across the Atlantic to Benfica in Europe, but that instability quickly led to pitch inconsistency. Instead of this triumphant rise everyone expected, his career became an endless cycle of loan spells. He eventually became a journeyman, playing for 15 different teams across 9 different countries. The sport is just so coldly efficient sometimes, and it simply abandoned its former prodigy. And as those struggles became apparent, the public perception changed with whiplash-inducing speed. The cruelty of the sports media cycle was on full display here. The exact same publications and networks that had orchestrated his coronation years earlier, they were now the ones mocking his tryouts for lower league teams. The narrative ruthlessly flipped from future savior to wasted potential, completely ignoring the systemic pressures and premature physical demands that actually caused the fall in the first place. Which brings us to our final section, lessons for modern football. Could it have been different? To understand this, we really have to investigate the structural failures of the sport, the very environment that built him up only to guarantee his fall. Modern soccer academies actually function differently today, specifically because of what happened to Freddy. First off, clubs now actively analyze the hype environment, fiercely shielding their wonderkids from early media exposure. Secondly, they've been forced to explore alternative development paths, environments that prioritize a player's biological and psychological growth over immediate commercial extraction. And third, they apply these lessons daily, making sure the hype machine is kept strictly at bay until a player is truly ready. Ultimately, Freddy Adu became the ultimate cautionary tale in modern football. The core tragedy of this explainer of his whole story is simple but profound. The expectations were simply too high, and they came far, far too fast. It has left a permanent mark on how we view young talent, especially in American soccer. It forces us to pause when we see that next dazzling 14-year-old making headlines and really ask ourselves what we're actually demanding of them. Because as the relentless, unforgiving modern football machine continues to turn, always hunting for its next star to monetize, Freddy's story begs a really vital question. Who is the next wonder kid? And are we just repeating the exact same mistakes? Have we actually learned anything at all? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll see you next time.